All right, welcome back to our program today. We are going to talk about having a killer open house strategy for your open houses. For anybody tuning in live or tuning into the YouTube video of this program, you can download the materials for this class, the handouts or the workbook that goes with it, by going on to the LAER Career Den, going to the library under training. This is our new agent training program, and you'll want to download Day 10 materials, Day 10 databases, open houses, and seminars. So we're going to focus for the next 15 or 20 minutes just talking about having a strategy when it comes to hosting a killer open house. So in some of the other classes, we talked about what unbelievable, awesome agents do, and then what most agents do. And unfortunately, what I think many real estate agents do when it comes to an open house is that they show up and they've printed from MLS just some listing sheets, and they really don't have a strategy involved. For them, the open house is just a tactic, something that they have to do to keep their seller happy. But done well, an open house can be an awesome opportunity to meet new people, grow your database, and market to other potential home sellers. So let's talk about open house strategy. First of all, why do we want to have a killer open house? We want to be able to get new buyers and new sellers. Also realize what many sellers don't realize is it's not always the best place to actually sell a house. In fact, a very small percentage of people actually buy the house that they went and visited at an open house. So you're not necessarily at the open house to sell that house. What you are there to do is to audition. So if you think about that, your job is to show up and showcase your talent, because you are going to bring in a steady flow of people, many of them there to buy a house, but also many of those people also have a house to sell. And so you want to put on an audition for all those people so they can see the kind of talent you bring to the table when you are representing a person who needs to sell their home. So there's lots of reasons to host an open house, the least of being that you're actually going to sell that house. Number one, it's a talent show, lots of buyers and sellers coming through. Number two reason for doing that open house, it's to satisfy your sellers. Even though you know you may not sell the house at the open house, it is a great opportunity to just make your sellers really happy and wow them. It's a great opportunity to practice our skills, how to greet people, how to meet somebody at the door, shake their hand, show people around the house. And number four, maybe, just maybe, you do end up selling that house. So there's all these great reasons for hosting an open house. Now, what I like to remind people is if you're going to go out and spend your time doing an open house, make sure it's the right open house. Don't go out and say, I'll just do any open house. Like, you want to really do an open house where you can get something out of it, that it's not going to be a waste of your time. So I don't think you should hold an open house and an overpriced listing. If you know that it's way overpriced, don't show up and do that open house. It's a waste of your time. It does affect your reputation. People won't come, and because people won't come, then the sellers get upset that nobody came. And you don't want to be the person that does open houses at overpriced listings, because you will attract other overpriced listings. So make sure that if you're going to do an open house, you're doing the right one. Also, when it comes to open houses, and some of the reasons I say this is especially for newer agents, open houses are an awesome opportunity to start building your database. Even if you don't have inventory right now, meaning you don't have your own properties to do an open house for, there are plenty of LAER real estate agents who would be happy to let you host their open house. Why would somebody do that? Well, oftentimes some of the agents that are doing 10, 20, or $30 million in sales each year, they typically carry a large inventory of listings, and they can't do all the open houses that their sellers want them to do. So as a newer agent, one of the best places to go out and meet people who are potentially interested in buying or selling a house is by doing an open house. Many years ago, and we're going back probably 15 years, I had an agent, Charlie, who joined our company, and he was a brand new agent. Had never done real estate before. He had been in sales, but had never done real estate before. And he was an anomaly in this business because in his first year in business as a real estate agent, he made over $250,000. That very rarely happens with new agents in the business. And what he did is he was phenomenal at open houses. From the first day he started at our company, he would, throughout the week, he would plan for 6 open houses, 3 on Saturday and 3 on Sunday. He would start on Monday and he would start going through our inventory. He'd go on MLS and say, what kind of inventory does the office have? He'd pinpoint the properties he was most interested in doing the open houses for, because he knew that they were going to be a hot property, that he'd get a line out the door. Then he'd start calling those agents who had those listings and he'd say, I'd love to be able to do an open house, but I need to know right away because I'm going to start pre-marketing that open house throughout the week. So I need to know right away if you want me to do the open house. So here he was, a brand new agent, no database of his own yet, and all he would do all week was work on planning and marketing for 6 open houses the following week, hand-picking the ones he wanted to do. And by the way, agents at our company loved him because they're like, yeah, I hope Charlie wants one of my houses to do the open house because he's going to do a phenomenal job. But the point is, he was hand selecting the properties that were going to be the best open house opportunity for him too. Not always the best use of time to hold an open house in an area that's hard to find, or if it's really difficult to get to, or there's just no traffic to that area, it's going to be a hard time to do. You probably won't get as many people at the open house. So don't do open houses just because. If you are listing a property and you know that this house is just not going to get a lot of people at an open house, just be candid with your seller and say, you know what, honestly, less than 9% of people statistically across the country have ever bought a house by showing up at an open house. Chances are the buyer is not going to show up at the open house. We're going to market the property other ways. Just be strategic. If you're going to do an open house, know why you're doing it, market it in advance, and know that you're going to have a system in place to make sure that when you get leads from that open house that you're going to work them. Now, if you are talking to a seller and the seller says, I want an open house, I want an open house, I want an open house, but you know an open waste of time for that seller and you don't want to do it, you have 2 different options. One, you could see if there's another agent at the company that might want to do that open house. And number 2, if you Google why open houses don't work, you will find tons of articles that you could just print out and put them into a package and say to the seller, statistically, open houses are not a great place to get potential buyers. So just give your people some handouts as to why it's not going to work. So a couple things I like to tell people is, if you're going to do an open house, like I mentioned, Charlie, who his first year in real estate made $250,000 all off open houses, he had a plan exactly how every open house was meticulously going to be carried out. It wasn't like he was printing listing sheets 15 minutes before the open house was going to take place and showing up, and that was it. He had a plan where he started marketing Monday. He would door knock the houses around the house and introduce himself and say that he's going to be there this weekend. If they knew of anybody wanted to see the property, because by the way, that's a great opportunity to meet new people that you can add to your database. He also had a plan that he would say, if you want me to do an open house, I need to have a conversation with your seller, because he would have a plan that the seller had to do too. Not just showing up to a dark house. These are all the things your seller must do if they want me to do the open house. So they have to prep the property, turn the lights on, things like that. He always had food at his open houses. He always marketed to the street the week before. Unbelievable at pre-marketing that open house to get people there. Invitations, social marketing, planned for safety, like just knew exactly how the open house was going to be carried out. Second thing he would do is just talking with the seller. He'd say, we need to make sure the property is cleaned before I'm going to show up at the open house on Saturday or Sunday. I need you to go out and rake and landscape and make sure it looks good so we have curb appeal. If he saw that the house might need some touch-up paint, he had no problem telling people. If the rugs needed to be clean or the house needed to be decluttered, he'd go through, make sure that any burnt out bulbs were replaced so it looks bright when people come in. He would coach the seller on removing valuables before letting people into the house, and he would always make sure the sellers knew that it was a very good idea not to have pets roaming around the property for the open house. So when hosting an open house, have a checklist of things that you require for you to even do an open house, and then have a checklist that for me to go out and spend 2 hours at an open house, these are the minimum standards I have for the seller. That they get a clean landscape, make sure all the lights are working, the shades are pulled up, things like that. And oh, by the way, never, never, never let the seller stay. Because there are sellers that request that they stay for the open house because they think they could sell the property better. Super bad idea. For multiple reasons, that seller should absolutely never stay at the open house because they tend, for liability purposes, they might say something that they shouldn't say. You don't want your seller at the property. Now, let's talk about pre-marketing your open house. So, if you're hosting an open house on a Saturday or Sunday, don't just say, all right, I'll run by the office and get some balloons and print 20 listing sheets, and that's the extent of your marketing. Remember that this is an opportunity for you to showcase your talent. Another potential seller might see exactly what you're doing, so stand out, whatever you're going to do. So different things you can do. Definitely Facebook invitations, and put it out early. Like put something out early, like a little JPEG photo saying, hey, you're invited to my open house, going to have food and drinks at the open house. Post it on LinkedIn, Instagram, Snapchat, any of the social media sites. Send invitations you have to other potential sellers. So let's say that you're having an open house and you're going to wow people at your open house with food. We just had one agent that did a great cupcake tasting contest at our open house, like cool stuff like that to attract people, where people voted on the best cupcakes. But that's an opportunity for you to invite other potential clients that you want to work with, either buyers or sellers. So if you have somebody who's thinking about listing with you, just invite them to your open house and say, I want you to see the level of service I give to my people. Personally invite neighbors. Like I said with Charlie, who in his first year of business made $250,000 off of open houses, he would go door knock the neighbors all around that open house, give his business card, and he'd say, hey, I'm Charlie Doyle. I'm going to be hosting an open house here Saturday from 1 to 3. Do you know anybody that might be interested in coming? Do you know anybody who might be interested in selling their house on the street? Things like that. So huge opportunity to go out and meet the neighbors. You could send postcards, and if there's any like neighborhood websites or Facebook pages marketing to just that neighborhood, make sure you send invitations out to all of the neighbors. But think about it, stand out, because it is an audition. You're always auditioning for the next client, always, especially an open house. One of the stories I was reading online, there's an agent in California that what he does is every time he's doing an open house, he prints up a little postcard invitation. He puts them in his branded Frisbees. So he has Frisbees with his name and logo on it. And then a couple days before the open house, he drives down that street and he throws a Frisbee onto the front lawn of every property. So all the neighbors are like, oh, somebody's Frisbee's here. And then they see it's an invitation to the open house this weekend. So great marketing ideas like that will cause you to stand out for potential buyers and sellers. So do some Facebook marketing, interior and exterior photos. Write up something that evokes emotion so people want to show up. Maybe do a sponsored ad to the town and to your followers. If you have, well, I'll say first of all, everybody has a Boost by HomeSpotter account, and you can go in through Boost by HomeSpotter and market each of your open houses. So they have a specific open house ad that you can run like a 3-day advertising campaign just for your open houses. Not a bad idea to get noticed. Because think about it, you want people to just see you wherever they go. They see a Facebook ad, they see a Facebook post, they see a Frisbee in their front lawn, they see your open house signs down the street. So great idea to send a pre-open house report to the seller. You can give them links with material to print and share, and ask them who to invite. So in other words, make the seller of the property, ask them to also be responsible for helping you fill the open house. So many of our clients work for these big corporations like NetScout and Westford or Red Hat. Like, that's a huge opportunity to say, hey, is there a way I can market this open house on the internal bulletin board of your company? But give all the marketing pieces to the seller and say, hey, you help us get people to the open house as well. Next piece, do not be the agent that has one open house sign in front of the property. Go insane with your open house signs. Who cares if you have 20 open house signs pointing to the property? It makes you memorable. When you get to the open house, turn on all the lights, make sure the shades are up. Not a bad idea to put some music on. Have your handouts all ready to give out. A great idea in New England especially is to have a seasonal photo display. So if you're selling a house in the middle of winter, not a bad idea to have all the photos out of what the house looks like in the spring or in the fall, so people get a really good idea of what the backyard looks like. Twistnoodle.com, where you can make like a branded coloring page. And then there's also a website called Armored Penguin. For the older kids, you can come up with you can make your own word searches where you just type in all the words you want to be in the word search, or a crossword puzzle. So you can make your own stuff just to hand out to the kids that come through. Yes?
So Sunday I asked the seller to leave the television on so that we could get highlights of the Patriots game. And somebody came in the door, and I thought I had done a great job. He says, well, you might have thought you did, but he said the last open house we were at, they had an outdoor big screen in the backyard and were showing the game.
That's awesome. And depending where your open house is, don't forget the other kinds of kids that might show up. So have some dog treats, especially if you're in like a condo complex that has lots of dogs and things like that. Can't hurt to be ready, because people remember when their real estate or a potential real estate agent thinks about their family and their pets. And just have a strategy. One top agent who used to work for us, he had a unique strategy, not for everyone, but he would always put the listing sheets on top of the refrigerator, because he said it helped him weed out who is really interested in the property. So if somebody wanted a listing sheet, they'd have to ask him, and then he knew he had like a decent buyer, somebody that really had interest. And whether that works for you or not, everybody's different, but the whole idea is you should have some sort of strategy when it comes to your open house. Always make people fill out the sign-in sheet. So there are definitely people that will come through your open house and they do not want to fill out a sign-in sheet. You can just say to them, the seller has specifically asked that anybody coming through for safety purposes signs into the open house, or I can't have you go through the property. I say go above and beyond and have a great sign-in sheet. So many real estate agents have like just the basic sheet with name, address, email address, But what happens if you could ask specific questions about the property? You can have whatever you want on your sign-in sheet where you ask people to evaluate the property. What do you think of the pricing? Things like that, because potentially, depending on market, you might use that sign-in sheet if they're giving you some feedback to also get a price reduction if that's needed down the road. So you can also ask where they heard about the open house, so you know for the future. Ask them if they have another house to sell, whether they're buying or selling or just looking, and if they're working with another real estate agent. So here's a sample of an open house survey some agents use. Again, depending on market, right now we're in a hot market, so you may not necessarily need something like this, but having lived through many markets, you will eventually hit a market where houses don't sell quickly, where people put their houses on the market, and then after multiple price reductions over several months, then their house might sell. In those instances, not a bad time to give anybody coming through an open house just this open house survey where you say, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the interior of the home? What suggestions do you have for the interior? On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the exterior? What suggestions do you have? Why is this so powerful? Because sometimes one of the hardest things that we do as real estate agents is we have to give bad news to our sellers and say, you know what, the house smells like cat urine. How about if you don't have to say it? That you can have an independent third party who just came through the house and said that. What happens if you had 10 people that said that? And 10 people came through the house and all of them said that they wouldn't consider it because they smell cat urine when they come through the house. So if you have a difficult listing and you know that there's a difficult conversation that you have to have with the seller, then, and you're doing an open house, why not use that as an opportunity to get people to fill out these surveys so that you don't have to be the one that's saying it. What kind of food can you provide? Coffee, tea, water. You can provide any type of food at your open house. Do something fun, like I mentioned, the agent that did the cupcake tasting contest. When people come through, ask them if they would like you to tour them through the property, because it's a great way to build rapport and have a conversation instead of just letting the person kind of go out on their own and look at the property. Just say, hey, you want me to tour you through and take you through the property? And you can ask them lots of questions like, how long have you been looking for a house? When do you need to move by? Do you have another house to sell? Have you been pre-approved yet? Great way to build that rapport. Always keep in mind safety. This is super important. If there's one theme you'll see through many of our classes, I try to teach agents like to keep safety in mind. There have been accidents across the country where people met the wrong person at an open house. So there's all different ways to ensure your safety. One way is you can get a license to carry pepper spray so that you always have that, at least in Massachusetts. I don't think you need the license. Huh? In Massachusetts you do. In New Hampshire you don't. But it's just a matter of going to the police department and registering it. There's apps, like the Be Safe app is one that basically turns your cell phone into an alarm that alerts other people if you're in danger. Never go into a basement or attic. Like, don't let yourself ever be backed into a spot. If you feel unsafe when somebody shows up, just text a friend and say, hey, call me in 10 minutes. And if I don't answer, there's a problem. And another great idea is to have a little sign up that says that as people come in, that all of their license plates get registered with the office, so that they know, somebody knows the license plates that have come into the property. Make sure that while you're at the open house, you use that as an opportunity to continue to market the property. So do a video while you're there, just a quick video of the property, and talk about the different rooms, what the backyard looks like. Give them a tour. So if somebody can't make your open house, they can still see your open house on social media. Instagram, Facebook, post it on LinkedIn, etc. After your open house, follow up with a handwritten thank you note, not just to your seller, but to everybody that attends that open house. Add these people to your database. So as soon as you get an email address, go in and add it to your B-list database. Get that person onto an email drip campaign at a minimum. And then if you, on all the ones that you believe are a potential candidate, somebody that you can work with, I'd keep calling them and texting them for 4 to 6 weeks. Just text, follow up if you see another open house that they might be interested in, or a house comes on the market they might be interested in. But keep pushing, keep staying on top of those people, because these are all people, or 90% of the people coming to an open house. There's a reason they're out there shopping for a home. There's not much better that you can get when it comes to a qualified candidate. And then last but not least, send a post-open house report to the seller. Who attended, how those people heard about the open house, what kind of social marketing, any feedback or interest that you received while they were there. Curtis Knight out of our Bill Rick office, he's really great with his sellers, that when he hosts an open house, he has them on text, his seller on text, and as soon as the first person comes through, he texts the seller, hey, good news, we just got our first person came through the open house. He said the reason he does that is the entire time you're doing your open house, all your seller is doing is like thinking, who's there, how many people came, I wonder if anybody came yet. And he's like, I just want to put them at ease. He's like, I'll send it once the first person comes, then maybe the second, and then they're at least at ease, and then like an hour in, he'll give them an update of how many more people came, things like that. So try to get into the mind of your seller, like what can you do to really stand out to your seller so they're not sitting there worried or thinking like, I wonder if anybody even showed up to the open house. So a few things I want to recap. Sellers that you're working with who are thinking about using you. Invite neighbors and people through town throughout Facebook. Give the seller a pre-open house report on what marketing you're doing, and ask those sellers to stay involved in the marketing. That you want them posting it at their office, sharing it on their Facebook page as well. Have lots of signs, different kinds of signs, attract attention. Greet people and introduce yourself to everyone who comes in. Have plenty of collateral materials. Be ready for kids and acknowledge kids when they come through the door. Have sign-in sheets and surveys. If you think you're going to need price reduction, have a survey that people can fill out at that open house. Serve pastries or coffee or something. Don't forget to do some marketing while you're at the property. Do a quick video, do Facebook, Instagram, etc. And then afterwards, make sure to follow up with everybody that attended that open house and give a full report to your seller about what happened at the open house. Yep.
Nice that you mentioned kids again. One time I did an open house, and I did this quite by accident, I'll confess. At the kitchen table, I had coloring books and crayons, and they had like a little breakfast area.
Mm-hmm.
The kids just sat down and stayed there, which allowed the parents the freedom to
Yes.
roam around, and they knew that the kids were occupied. So.
Yes. And that is it for our open house strategies on how to host an open house that doesn't suck. Thank you for joining us.